70 men, one boxcar, no food, no water, 3 days in January cold, and the Germans sealed the door from the outside. I'm 96 years old and I can still hear the sound that door made when it shut. A heavy iron sound, final, like the whole world had just locked you out. Some of those boys I never learned their names. Some of them I'd known since basic training. All of us were 20 years old, give or take. All of us thought we might not come out of that car alive. I came out. Not all of them did. That's the story I need to tell you today, while I still can. My name is Walter Edelman. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I went to war when I was 19 years old, the same way most boys went, believing it would be over before it really started. I was captured by German forces in the winter of 1944. Outside of a small village in Belgium, close enough to the German border that when the wind came from the east, you could almost feel the difference in the air. Colder, harder. They took maybe 200 of us that day, marched us east in the snow, rifles at our backs. I remember thinking, I remember this clearly, that my feet were going to fall off before we ever reached wherever they were taking us. I want to tell you this story not because I think I'm special. I don't. I want to tell you because the men in that boxcar, most of them are gone now, and somebody has to say their names. Somebody has to say what they endured. They endured something that should never be forgotten. Before all of that, I was just a kid from a row house on Lackawanna Avenue. My father worked in the coal mines. My mother took in laundry on Saturdays. We had a dog named Hector and a radio in the living room that we all sat around after dinner. I had a girl too, Eleanor Marsh. She had dark hair and she smelled like soap and something warm that I could never quite name. I wasn't what you'd call brave growing up. I was average, good at school, decent with my hands, lousy at baseball. My brother Tommy was the one people noticed. Tommy could walk into a room and make it brighter. Tommy enlisted before me, Marine Corps. He was already in the Pacific by the time I got my notice. I remember the morning I left. My mother made eggs and toast. She didn't cry, not in front of me. My father shook my hand at the door. That was it. That was the whole goodbye. One handshake from a man who loved me but never learned to say so. I thought about that handshake a lot, later. In the boxcar. I held on to it like it was something physical. Like if I squeezed hard enough in my memory, I could feel his hand again. You know what that's like? Holding on to something so tight it almost hurts. That's what you do when everything else is taken away. The Germans caught our platoon at dawn. We were moving through a tree line, December 19th, 1944, and they were already on 3 sides of us before our sergeant knew what was happening. It was fast. It was loud. And then it was quiet in a way that combat quiet never quite is, because the silence after a firefight carries everything that just happened inside it. Sergeant Kowalski, good man from Chicago. He told us to put our rifles down. He said it calm. He said it like a man who had just done the math and accepted the answer. I put my rifle down. They marched us for 2 days, snow to our ankles. Some of the boys lost their boots to the mud and wrapped their feet in anything they could find. Coats, rags. One kid used a German soldier's scarf he'd grabbed off the ground. The guards didn't stop him. I've always wondered about that. A small mercy maybe, or just indifference. On the morning of the 3rd day, we arrived at a rail yard. I didn't know what it was at first, just tracks and gray sky and the smell of coal smoke. Then I saw the boxcars, long wooden cattle cars sitting on the tracks like they were waiting patiently for us. A German officer walked down the line of prisoners. He wasn't cruel about it, he just pointed. Groups of men, directed toward different cars. No names, no numbers, just a finger. When he pointed at me, I walked. The door slid open. Inside it was dark, already crowded. I stepped in. The door slid shut. 70 men in a space built for cattle. No room to sit, no room to fall. You stood shoulder to shoulder and you breathed what the man next to you had already breathed. Cold came through the wooden slats in thin, sharp lines, like the car itself was breathing. First day, men talked, whispered mostly. You heard prayers in English. You heard a kid from Georgia crying quietly and nobody said a word about it because there was nothing to say. Second day, talking stopped. A boy named Richie Dunmore from Ohio, started to go bad around the second evening. Fever. He was burning up. He couldn't stand on his own anymore, and in that crowd, if you stopped standing, you were going down. Men around him took turns, 2 at a time, holding him upright. I was one of them. I held Richie Dunmore's weight against my own for I don't know how long. Hours. My arms shook, my legs shook. My whole body was a kind of low, constant scream of cold and exhaustion and thirst. But you don't let go. You know why? Not because you're brave. Don't let anybody tell you that. You hold on because the man next to you is holding on. And if he can do it, you can do it. And that's the whole of it. That's the whole of courage, really. Matching the man beside you, minute by minute. On the third day, the car became very quiet. I heard a sound I'd never heard before and haven't heard since. It was the sound of men deciding very quietly inside themselves whether to keep going or to stop. You can't explain that sound to someone who hasn't heard it. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. I spoke up. I said, and I remember this. I said, "Everybody still standing? Sound off." And one by one they did. From all corners of that dark car. Names. Just names. Kowalski. Morrison. Hernandez. Webb. 61 voices. 9 men lost to us by then. Some gone in the confusion of capture, some overtaken by what the cold and the thirst had done. But 61 voices came back to me in that dark. I just did what I had to do. I asked the question. They answered it. That's all. The train stopped on the 4th day. The doors opened and the light came in like something physical. It hit you. I blinked and stumbled out onto frozen ground, and some of the men just sat right down in the snow because their legs gave out and they didn't care anymore. They just needed to be outside. We were in Germany, a work camp. Bad, but not the worst. We found that out later, that there were worse places. Much worse. Richie Dunmore made it out. He did. Thin as paper by the end. But he walked out of that camp in the spring of 1945 when the Allies came through. He sent me a letter years later. Just 2 sentences. He said, "I know you held me up. I never forgot." I kept that letter. It's in a box in my bedroom right now. The war ended in May. I came home in July. My mother cried at the door. She didn't hold back this time. My father shook my hand again, same as before, except this time he held it a moment longer than he needed to. Eleanor was waiting. I married her that September. I'm 96 years old. Eleanor's been gone 11 years. Tommy made it back from the Pacific. He passed in 2019. Most of the men from that boxcar, they're all gone now. But I'm still here. And what I want you to take from this, what I need you to take from this, is not that war is glorious. It isn't. It's not romantic. It's cold and it smells bad, and it is the loneliest thing a human being can experience. What I want you to understand is what I learned in that dark. You hold on. You match the man beside you. You call out in the darkness and you wait. You wait for the voices to come back. They will come back. They almost always come back if you have the courage to ask. Don't wait until you're 96 to learn that. Ask now.